Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me. Oh, yeah. Vielen Dank für die Einladung. I have a distant German past, but I will continue in English. And I spoke to Franziska, who told me that it's all about space. And space is, of course, the essence of our profession. So, I would like to talk about space in time. Our work is about the space we occupy in relation to the past, but especially the space we want to occupy in the future. Space in context. Our work is about how we situate ourselves in relation to our context, physical context, but also social, cultural context. And it's about personal space. Architecture is about collaboration. So my work is about the space I occupy in relation to those I work with, and about how much space we give each other. And I think it's very important to talk about to own your space. Ultimately, our work is about giving space. We give space so that those who will work or live in our buildings can make it their own space, or build their own nest, or shoot their own roots, even. So this beautiful photograph from 1934 by the Hungarian-Dutch photographer Eva Besnieux is the summum of owning your space. Nicole Dumont is lying in the window and she's looking over the city, diagonally upwards. The cat looks down. You see the detail of her shoe, the curves of the cushion she's lying on. You see the roof, the street sign. You also see the street, and in the distance another street and a larger building. In one image, the intimate world of this woman is linked to the scale of the city. A timeless image that for me shows what architecture is all about. Space in time. In the 19th century, large parts of Amsterdam were very poor. And in certain neighborhoods, people lived in so-called slum dwellings. Small spaces for far too many people, often without windows, without ventilation. And these conditions were, of course, extremely bad for one's health. But in 1902, there was a new law introduced. So to do something about these terrible conditions, the Housing Act was introduced at the beginning of the last century. The purpose of this law was to make it impossible to build and occupy poor and unhealthy houses, and to promote the building of good houses. It literally says so. This resulted in the creation of so-called residential palaces, woonpaleizen. Residential buildings with good dwellings, so with windows and rooms, which formed neighborhoods which had lots of green space, lots of collective space. So this allowed people to live more hygienic, open the windows, and be outside a lot. And many of the buildings that came out of this era have a beautiful urban scale, rich detailing, and a lot of art integrated into the facades. The Spaarndammerhart, a neighborhood in Amsterdam, is famous for these residential buildings. The urban layout with green courtyards, gates, and art. And a court nearby is this court, the court on the Krommenie-straat. And in that court, there was a beautiful wooden school that you could enter through the gate on the Krommenie-straat. The place has a crystal clear drawing, a street and a court with an E-shaped school in it. But nothing so changeable as a city. After the war, the school disappeared and the court became a playground. And in the drawing, only the street remains. The court is an empty place. And at the end of the 70s, urban renewal came into being. Buildings that were no longer good were just demolished. And in the Communiestraat also, poor foundations, so it was demolished to make something new. The street and the court became the tabula rasa for new developments. The Spaarndammer School was built there in the 70s. A quite stubborn school that didn't care about the DNA and the urban drawing of the Spaarndammer buurt. It was not very convenient, this urban layout, so the school just needed more space and lies across the street. The drawing shows a wondrous new body lying across the court and the street. Here you can see it. And the place is no longer accessible, the street is gone. The school and its yard take over the court and the street. About 15 years or 20 years ago, the plans for the transformation of the port, you see here left above, into a new neighborhood started. The school moved to that new neighborhood and the building in our court was demolished. The drawing shows an empty field. This aerial photo shows a small green oasis with trees and grass. And this is where our story begins. So, space in context. We wanted a new story in a new era, but starting with a strong curiosity about history, the place and the people we built for. We wanted a public court, and we saw the amazing trees on the side, which we considered a great treasure. And we wanted the street back again. We wanted connection, connecting with the place, the buildings, the nature, the plants, the animals, and the arts. The drawing is clear again and shows a street, a court, and 3 gates. And just like 100 years ago, the space we add is based on living together in the city with courtyards, shared gardens, and gates. A new space in which architecture, landscape, and art are interwoven and make each other more beautiful and stronger. From day one, 2 architectural firms, our firm and Marcel Lok, a landscape architect and an artist, worked together on equal basis. And this requires an open and curious attitude. It also requires a clear attitude towards your own personal space, your profession. These are the first sketches from artist Martijn Sandberg. I really love them. The art, like in the Spaarndammer buurt and the Amsterdam school style, has deeply penetrated the architecture. And they, as landschapsarchitecten, looked very carefully at the trees and considered them to be vollständig, fully fledged residents of the site. The trees were allowed to be put aside for the construction and were then put back in very nice places so that the gardens are fully green from the start, not only for the new residents, but also for the residents in the neighborhood's houses. Yeah, and who do we build for? We always ask ourselves, who do we build for? For people, for animals, for plants? The project includes social renting, commercial renting, buying, and this division of categories has no architectural meaning to us. And then we begin building. We found the Communiestraat again. A street with gates through which you are seduced into another world. With Martijn Sandberg artwork in the gates, on the floor. To a court with herbs and eatable plants, as in an urban interior with its own atmosphere. with very beautiful house numbers by Martijn, which are incorporated into facades as subtle signposts. And a third gate between the courtyard and the garden. The garden has those mature green residents, the trees, that have seen everything happen. The houses have a private outdoor area and a large shared garden. The shared garden lies as a reaching out between the existing buildings and the new building. The garden does not belong to anyone, but to everyone. You look into it, you live in it, you dig your hole, you build your nest. And the houses are for everyone. You rent from a corporation, from an investor, or you have a mortgage. The building doesn't tell you where you are. So, this building is about the flexibility of the city, about how we want to design, from starting with a great curiosity for the place and its history. Because, of course, that's where the keys to the future lie. And this is last week. The greenery is doing well, thanks to DS Landschap. It's a green space for people, for animals, for plants. It's a space of the city, it's public. It's a space I believe in. So, thank you very much. Vielen, vielen Dank.